Hi, everyone. It's me, Barb, and I know it's not my turn yet, but I just want to give you information about the reading that we're going to be doing for the second half of the course. There's a lot of it, but the books are all really good. I love every book that is on the list that I'm about to show you. So hopefully it's not going to be onerous for you. Hopefully it's going to be fun to read this. But these are books, throw them in your bag, read them when you're waiting for your kids to get out of practice, read them before bed, dare I say in the bathroom. I don't care where you read, but I would like you to be reading at least a week ahead, if at all possible, because part of your discussion is going to be discussing these books. And if you're reading the book and then I'm timing the discussion, so there's a little bit of lag time, but I need you to be able to jump in and discuss these books. So as a result, the first section, which are award-winning books, skew a little bit younger and a little bit shorter for the most part, but be aware, look at the calendar. I didn't put dates on this form that you're looking at, but you can look at the dates. And if you're on vacation, then you might want to choose, say, the graphic novel version that doesn't take as long to read, at least for me. Other people, sometimes it takes them longer. You know you. So here's what this form looks like and how I want you to fill it out. And then if you want to go away and do it, that's great. If you want to hear a little bit about the books, I'll do some short book talks once I've shown you the form. So the first question is my first name, my last name. You can read this. The email that I prefer to be contacted in, because there are two classes, and so you might partner up one of the assignments. There are 6 weeks that I have, and there are 5 different assignment types, one of which is collaborative. You have to work with somebody else in one of the classes. I'm also going to put some questions about how you work with others so that you can do that. But I want everybody to have everybody's email in case you're partnering with someone in the other section. So my email that I prefer to be contacted in at, that is required. If you prefer to text, but you don't necessarily, if you prefer to text, you can put your number here, but if you don't want people to have your number, you don't have to put it. That's not required. That's up to you. All right. So the first section are award winners, and the way that it's laid out is that you choose your first choice. Now you might think, oh my gosh, We Are Not Free and The Poet X. I've heard such great things about both of those. They're both, I can't decide. Great. Tick those both for your first choice. And then your second choice, well, I like, Everything Sad is Untrue, sounds really interesting, but I'm not sure. So give me your first choice and your second choice. You also have the option of surprise me. And that means that you don't care, you trust me. You don't have to trust me, but I'm very trustworthy. If you don't honestly care, then I'm just going to randomly choose books for you. Okay. They're all, as I said, tremendous. So the first week 7, is award-winning books. These are all books that have won awards. The second is nerdy books. These are mostly science fiction and fantasy, although I do have a time travel. See you yesterday. So they're, but essentially science fiction, fantasy. They have one component of one or the other. Then, and Graceling. This is available as a graphic novel or as a novel. Your choice. I think it's going to be interesting to see a discussion where you have the option of both. All right, then scary books. These are books that are some of them are just scary, scary like we think of, but some of them are scary in things that have happened that are scary for kids, because a lot of people don't like horror, although I have one just straight up horror. Two. All right. Sexy books. You know what? Books about romance, but also that deal with sex. Teenagers are interested in it. It's not we're not teaching them about it. Believe me, they've heard about it before. But also romance. For the most part, we also look at LGBTQIA, specifically issues about those kids who we can be a real resource for in this section. And then nutritious books. These are books that are, and I've made a decision because I have so many great historical fiction books that I love. We're looking at books that could be used in curriculum, but fiction. I didn't put any nonfiction in the class this time around, even though I do believe that good nonfiction can be literature. And there are, I think, a couple of memoirs in here. but for the most part, nonfiction is something that hopefully you're going to look at in your collection development aspect of this program. So sorry. And then week 12 is your choice. You get to read whatever the heck you want. So that you don't have to pick. But I will put a question that says, that asks you what you're thinking of. You can change it up, but I want everybody reading something differently. So unless you're working with a partner, then you can both do the same book. All right. And again, one of these weeks is going to be a bye week where you don't have to do anything. So, that might be the week that you've, the week that you're reading for the next week, you're reading a big fat book. That might be the book that you want to take your bye week. So anyway, so if you want to just look at these books, be free, you're done. But I'm going to go through and just give a quick, little book talk on each one. Just so people know what they're getting into if this is a new field for you and you're not familiar with these titles. All right, a lot of these come from the Mass Teen Choice Book Award because I worked on that award. And so that's a lot of my recent reading. Most of them are pretty new. Okay, so first up for award winners, excuse me, heavens. We Are Not Free by Tracy Chee. This is a group of kids who have, it's a ramp up and going off to and living at and leaving internment camps for Japanese citizens during World War II. And it's told in a bunch of different voices. Dragon Hoops by Ji-Luen Yang. That is about a kid it's about a grown man. It's a memoir of Ji-Luen Yang's shift from being a high school, I can't remember if he's math or science, STEM teacher, to being a full-time cartoonist. And it's also the story of the basketball team, the championship basketball team in his town as he's making this shift. So it's his story about, living your dream, but also a great sports hook. And it's a graphic novel and it's huge, but it reads easily. So it's one of those nice ones for kids who, want to look like they're carrying a big book, but it's not actually that terrifying to read. All right. Truth is Told by Mason Buttle. I recently took a young adult lit class, and this was a beautiful book that I had. It's about a kid who's got some learning issues, and I think he has that thing where colors make like sand. I used to know. Anyway, Mason's got a lot going on. And it's the story of him. His best friend has died recently, and he's friendless. And this is about him making a new friend and being the victim of bullying. I absolutely loved it. It was a revelation to me. I keep saying that I feel that way about all these books. So that's just what you should know going in. Everything Sad and Untrue is about a kid it's his immigrant experience, and Daniel Nayeri, who wrote it, works in book editing, and this is his memoir. And oh my gosh, it is hysterically funny and heartbreaking at the same time, which I don't know how that happened. It's so good. Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is a few years older, maybe 4, but they just put it into the 9th grade curriculum at my high school on my recommendation. And it's fantastic. It's written in verse form, and it's about a young girl who poetry helps her deal with her strained relationship with her mom and her religion and the people around her, and the kids really responding to it. So, and then surprise me if you they all sound great, don't they? If you don't have a preference, let me know. Okay, the nerdy books. These are science fiction and fantasy. Graceling by Kristen Cashore is the book that sired me as a fantasy reader. It's she is local. She went to Simmons, and this is a book about a young girl who is she has a gift, a grace, and her grace is according the way that she's marketed, her grace is death. She's a stone cold killer who works for her uncle, who's the king, and her reputation is one who is his hired murderer, and no one can stop her because she's got this superpower. It was just recently re-released as a graphic novel that was beautiful, and I read it again and I loved it just as much. Snapdragon also a graphic novel. This is middle grade. Oh, I should go back and tell you that Mason Buttle and Everything Sad and Untrue are both marketed as middle grade as well. Snapdragon, straight up middle grade, about a kid who meets a witch who can bring animals back to life. It's super weird, and I loved it. It was a Mass Teen Choice book last year. Iron Widow is what they call new adult. It's a little bit older, but also has a lot of teen appeal. The story is a young woman in a culture where men are very much dominant. And she is basically, they use, those big mecha gods. Oh, I forget what they're called. Those big, like giant robot things that are also a little bit alive. I mean, I do not have the nerd vocabulary for this, but she fights only men can fight, and she swoops in, and women are like the power, and they basically, their life force gets sucked out as the men are fighting, and she takes over and sucks the life force out of her partner instead of the other way around, and manages to win this battle. It's, Google it. I can't even describe it. It's so weird. It's so interesting. Outlaw Scarlet and Brown is terrible cover, but great adventure novel in a post-apocalyptic Britain where London is underwater and zombies roam everywhere. It's wick. See You Yesterday is romance, time travel. It's the first day freshman year of college, keeps Groundhog Daying. Adorable. And actually, can this be? No, I didn't, but I listened to Iron Widow and See You Yesterday. They were both great. I should be telling you about the audiobook versions. I listened to We Are Not Free, full cast, fantastic. And Everything Sad is Untrue, also listened to, great audiobook. Iron Widow, I was listening to it at 2 times the speed because I just wanted to mainline the whole story. See You Yesterday, also listened to, terrific. Okay. Scary books. These are not just terrifying, horror books, but also, books about scary stuff. The Golden Hour is a graphic novel. It's a middle grade. A kid witnesses active school violence, a school shooting, and it's him coming back from it. It also has the aspect, which I love because I'm from the Midwest, where the difference between being a town kid and being a country kid when you're in school, and how it can be hard to have friendships across that line. Beautifully illustrated about how photography, he sort of deals with his PTSD through photography. Really good. Fighting Words is also middle grade, also about a girl who survives a lot. And Kimberly Brubaker Bradley, I'm sure that I finally took The War That Saved My Life out of this class because everybody's already read it because it's so wonderful. And she just writes about trauma in a way. This is a book for middle grade kids. And you definitely, as adults, we know what the trauma is. And it's not quite sure if the kid knows 100%. Anyway, so good. One of the best books I've read about trauma ever. Cemetery Boys is Aiden Thomas, and it's scary. It's about a kid who wants to be a brujo, which is a magician who can a person who can bring the dead back to life, basically. And it's steeped in Latin culture, and but the kid is trans, and so nobody in his family thinks he can be a brujo. They want him to be a bruja, which is a healer. It's the female version, but the mother goddess makes him a brujo. He's a brujo, he can bring people back to life, and he accidentally does, and it worked. So there's this ghost hanging out with him. There's a lot going on. It's phenomenal. I listened to this audiobook and it was great. The Weight of Blood. This was so scary. It's a kind of a retelling of Carrie, but in, I want to say, early 2000s, maybe. Things are going viral. So it's a little bit in the past, but it doesn't feel historical. And I'm trying to think of how to describe it. So it's Carrie told in the world of segregated proms. It's got bullying. It's got, a girl who murders everybody at prom, and you kind of hope she gets away with it. Tiffany Jackson is one of my favorite writers, and she writes really scary stuff. The audiobook for this is with a full cast, and it was tremendous. And then The Silence That Binds Us, this is about a girl whose brother commits suicide. And he was super like, valedictorian, going to Princeton, captain of the basketball team. Everything looked great on paper, but he was clearly suffering. In retrospect, she looks back and was like, oh my gosh, she was clearly suffering from depression, but I didn't see it. And she's blaming herself. This is one that I listened to too, but it's actually, I listened and I read. I went back and forth with this. Both were great, but I was like yelling at her in the car, like, honey, no, you're a child. It's not your fault. All right. Next up is Sexy Books. Okay. Heartstopper. You only have to read the first one, but when I read the first one, I was like immediately went and read the next four, and they're all available. They're available as webcomics for free. So you can get them that way if you like. So that was the Mass Teen Choice Book Award winner last year. It was also turned into a really cute series on Netflix. It's, two boys in love in England. Blackout is Donnell Clayton put it together, but a couple of these, Tiffany Jackson wrote for it. Oh my gosh, what is her name? Who wrote The Hate You Give? Angie Thomas wrote for it. There's like 5 of the best Black female young adult writers today have short stories. They're short stories. They're all set in New York City. It's super New York City-ish on a day when the power goes out. So the trains aren't running. Nobody can recharge their phone. And they're just adorable Black joy love stories. And there's 5 of them, and one of them goes throughout, and then the rest of them are chopped up. It's a delight. Home Field Advantage is a story about a girl who's the perfect cheerleader. She's adorable looking and she loves the team, and she wants to go away. Obviously, obviously every teenager wants to go away. No, she, I think cheering is going to be her ticket out of town. So she does everything right, boy. And then her team gets a new quarterback who's a girl, and people freak out because this is, I believe, Texas, but it might be Oklahoma. It's big football country. Sure, it comes as no surprise to anyone that these two crazy kids fall in love, but are they going to keep it on the down low? What's going to happen? It's told in both of their voices, and this is one that I listened to too. And I have to say the cheerleader voice was super annoying, but it could have been because I always listen to books at least 1.5 because they have to go faster for me. But it was adorable. And then This Is My Brain in Love is about 2 kids who both have mental health issues, but they also have, family stuff going on. It's 2 kids who, I like it because it's not a will they or won't they. It's pretty clear right up front that they have some cute chemistry and it's good. But you're also looking at like the girl's family, their family restaurant's going under, and he's hired as a like marketing guy because he has to do like a tech internship or whatever. And so he's hired by them. It's just, it sounds crazy, but it was really interesting to me to read about a family that's small business owners, but also he's got some issues with OCD, it's OCD or panic attacks, and she's got some depression. I don't know, but I hesitate to say garden variety mental illness, and I hope that you don't take that the wrong way, but these are issues that every kid in my high school knows somebody who has one or the other of these things going on. It's everywhere. And I loved reading about it as just, this is one aspect of this kid's life. That's not the issue necessarily. It's one kid who recognizes what his issues are and works on them. And one kid who is, maybe because of family support or what have you, is afraid to address them. And it's just really interesting. Okay. Not So Pure and Simple was so funny. And Lamar Giles also wrote the book, The Getaway, which if you like horror and you want to choose that for your week 12, it was so good. But this was the book that he, I think is on the Mass Teen Choice Book Award last year. And I fought for it. It was my favorite. It's about this kid who's raised in, he's not raised churchy, but his mom's going to church. And this is down in, I don't know, I want to say Georgia, maybe Alabama. It's like Bible Belty. And he accidentally, there's this girl he's been crushing on forever, and he accidentally signs a purity pledge as a way to like hook up with her or like ask her out, which, I mean, we can all as adults see that this is a very, very bad method, but it ends up being surprisingly adorable. And speaks to a lot of what's going on right now culturally with trying to keep kids from reading about sex or reading about, you know, homosexuality, or reading books about, critical race theory, as they call it. How keeping information from teens is just a real stupid idea. I'm just going to put it out there. All right. And then the last week is nutritious books. These are books that are, that you can, that have some, they're great stories, but we're throwing some knowledge in there. Everything I know about history, I learned from, well, historical fiction, and a lot of it's YA. So The Black Kids by Christina Reed. This was one that I read in my young adult class this spring. And it's a historical fiction novel. Everyone over 40, please be sitting down. Set in the Rodney King, set around the Rodney King riots in LA. I was already an adult. I don't know how that can be historical fiction, and yet here it is. So it's by Christina Reed, and it's about how a upper class, a fairly wealthy young Black girl in LA, how she perceives what's going in a predominantly white school, how she perceives what's going on. And it was fascinating. I absolutely loved it. She's a heroine who just really spoke to me. So there's that one. And then I Must Betray You, another historical fiction book set after I was already an adult. This is Ruta Sepetys, who, she's one of the big historical fiction writers. And this is a book about the revolution in Romania, which I did not care about. And it has a male protagonist. And I was like, okay, well, impress me, young man. But oh my God, it reads like a suspense novel. So I listened to this one, and I listened to it 2 times the speed, because I had to know what was going to, and I know what happened. I lived through it. I was a grown up. I was paying a mild bit of attention. Anyway, super grippy. All right. Beneath the Wide Silk Sky. This one, I just cried basically halfway across Pennsylvania. I was listening to this as I drove, and it's interesting because it is, and I just realized now I have 2 Japanese internment stories in here. Well, you know what? Don't read them both unless you're obsessed with the Japanese American experience during World War II. But this looks at the changes and the inherent racism in the laws that were there well before World War II. But it's such a just before the entrance and just after the entrance of the U.S. into World War II, and how this family was impacted by this. And they live in the Pacific Northwest on an island. They have a family farm that they're trying to keep going. And the youngest daughter is a photographer, and the middle daughter is just going wild. And then the son wants to leave. He wants to go away to college, but all his college money has been sunk into the farm, and he's just stuck there. It's really a fascinating window that I had never looked through before. All right. White Rose is straight up World War II. It's Sophie Scholl, who was she was murdered by the Nazis for distributing flyers, distributing flyers, it sounds like nothing, but the White Rose Network was a really impressive resistance group of young people, like college students. And she, her brother, and another friend were all killed because of it. And this is her story. And Kit Wilson wrote it, but she researched it. They researched it in Germany, and they're bilingual. So they had a lot of really good, the research is solid, and it's written in the form of verse, it's poems. So super, yeah, most of these are going to kick you right in the teeth emotionally. And then, The Star That Always Stays. This one I just read, and this is by a Christian publisher. And when I read the book, because the person who wrote it is a Betsy Tacy fan, and I love that era. It's a young girl who, I can't remember what her tribe is, but she is Native, and she and her family live on an island, and her mom is Native, and her grandmas and grandpa who help write, all of her authority figures are Native, and her dad is kind of a ne'er-do-well, and I think he's French Canadian, but her parents split up, so it's divorce in the 1910s, which is almost very much unheard of in her community, certainly. And her mom remarries this guy, and her mom's like, okay, now we don't want him to know that you're Indian, so you got to keep it under your hat. And it's based on the author's grandmother, I think grandmother, maybe great grandmother, but it's based on her like story. And it's so funny because there is religious stuff at the end, and it's not proselytizing, and it's pretty low key. But I read it when I got to that point, because I didn't know that it was a religious publisher. And I got there and I was like, oh my God. It was like, sometimes when I'm reading books, like for my summer reading list or something, and there's like a sex scene, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's not one I can put on summer reading, just because you don't want things to be too graphic. And it was the same thing. I'm like, this is pretty Jesus-y. I don't know if I can. I felt a little weird about it, but it's a great book. And also, one of the articles we look at talks about serving, conservative or religious teens. And this is a really sweet book written for high schoolers. She's a high school student in the book, although it definitely is appropriate for, little ones, middle grade. But anyway, it was a delight to me, and took me completely by surprise. All right. So you always have the option to be surprised yourself, and I'll pick something for you. And then I'm going to put a couple questions down here just about your methods for group work, what you think about that. And so fill it out. And let's see, it's May 27th. So we're going to say June 10th. June 10th is when this is due. I'll put that up at the top for those who stopped listening 45 minutes ago. All right. I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye.